Hello everybody, how are you doing? Good, I hope. So, I love Marvel and the comics medium as a whole, this is no secret. But one thing I've started to drift away from is the MCU. And I normally have an incredibly high tolerance for bad comic book movies. Like, seriously, I think the Venom movies are unironically peak. But even I've grown a distaste for most of the Marvel movies that come out nowadays. And most of that distaste comes from their general direction, or lack thereof. So, in order to calm my incredibly large ego, I wanted to pretend that I'm better than a whole team of writers and act like I could do their job infinitely better. Just kidding, for the most part. Jokes aside though, I'm just some random comic book nerd, but I do have a lot of thoughts on the MCU as a whole, and on what I feel like they're doing wrong. So, instead of this just being a video where I bash on the MCU and all its faults, I wanted to try and spin something more positive and give actual constructive criticism. I mean, it's not like Kevin Feige is going to see this anyway, but hey, if he does, cool, I guess. Now, before I pop off, I'm going to take a short section here just to give thanks and credit to the inspiration behind this video. A creator by the name of Troyoboyo17. He's without a doubt one of my favorite comic book themed creators out there right now. Like, it's just so genuinely refreshing to have someone like him on the platform. Like, seriously, I was essentially just drifting from comic book channel to comic book channel, looking for some, not unreasonable opinions on comic books. And then, bam, I found him. Seriously, I can't recommend him enough. Please go watch his videos, they're great. Anyway, onto the topic of the video. So, I've got 4 main topics that I want to talk about, and I'll go through them one by one. For the first topic I want to talk about, I'm just going to outright say it. I personally think they need to stop tiptoeing around it and just embrace the goofy side of comic books. Like, seriously, the concept of a superhero at its core is inherently pretty silly, and that's not a bad thing, far from it. And I'll give them props, they've definitely gotten better at this over the years. But it still feels like they're ashamed to embrace just how silly comic books can be. And when they do embrace it, it's always met with the MCU sarcastic humor going, "Oh, look at me, look at how dumb this suit is, But there's this charm in just letting the design be what it is. Like, it's one of the reasons I'm stoked for the Fantastic Four movie. Aside from the fact I love the Fantastic Four. Like, look at these costumes, the design, the aesthetic. It just oozes Jack Kirby era comics charm. And from the looks of the screenshot, it looks like they're using Galactus's actual design, where he's a big dude in a purple costume, not a weird space cloud thing. And while it looks like this movie is set in an alternate universe, by the gods, I hope this carries over to the MCU's main timeline. Also, side note, I just wanted to mention this, but I think the worst offender of the whole not embracing the goofy side of comic books thing is Taskmaster. Like, both of the costumes we've seen for that character make them look hyper serious, and while on average, Taskmaster looks like this. Like, don't get me wrong here, Taskmaster is a very intimidating character at times, but he's also a huge goofball. A very, very sarcastic goofball. And in the MCU, she doesn't say anything. I am glad Taskmaster is getting another shot with Thunderbolts, and while I'm not a huge fan of the actual visual design for the character in this, I'm really hopeful she'll be at least a little bit sarcastic during the movie. Honestly, if she just says anything, that'll be a win in my book. My next topic is a bit more of a straightforward critique, but for the love of Kirby, please stop having everything be a setup for something else. It's genuinely driving me crazy at this point. Majority of these movies end with them trying to set up something next, and then that one will set up something next. Like, where's any of this going? So, my critique is literally just stop setting up characters and just use the ones you currently have. Like, genuine question here. What was the point of setting up Star Fox? I know he's the brother of Thanos, but why? Like, what are they gonna use him for? Like, they're setting up all these different characters with almost no intention on actually using them. They're basically just getting new toys to play with if they feel like it, maybe later down the line. Like, Star Fox, Hercules, Scorpion. There's all these loose threads, and it feels like every show and movie is just adding more and more. Little heads up, this next section has spoilers for Agatha all along, so skip to here if you're wanting to avoid them. I actually like the show way more than I thought I would. But my biggest complaint is Billy. Don't get me wrong, I like the character himself, but the show built him up as a mystery as to who he is, when it was painfully obvious it's Billy. It wasn't even until the last few episodes where it was revealed. And by the time he became full-on Billy, the show was over and they set up a cliffhanger for Tommy. Like, I get this is all a setup for the Young Avengers, but by the time they finish setting all this up, if they even use these characters, all the older members of the Young Avengers are just going to be able to qualify for the regular Avengers. And where are the Young Avengers going to fit in anyway? I'm assuming we've got the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and then the regular Avengers. It's kind of feel like we're going to get too bloated with team-ups. Anyway, that's a side note. So this critique basically just amounts to, please just use the characters in something. Don't just keep adding more and more and more without any actual plan on using them in an interesting way, or any way for that matter. Like, I'm still waiting to see where Moon Knight is going to end up. Like, there's no indication of that as far as I know. Ironically, Moon Knight is actually a perfect transition into the next section, because it's about tone. And I've noticed most of these critiques could amount to Marvel just needing to let go of itself and embrace change. But I feel like this is the biggest case of them holding back. Because they really need to use different genres for different movies. Like, there are a few exceptions already, but pretty much every Marvel movie feels the same. Like, the genre is superhero movie, when they should instead just be movies that have superheroes as the main characters, if that makes sense. Like, for example, not every movie needs to be part comedy. Look at Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I actually love that one, but imagine how good it could have been if they gave Raimi full creative control and let him go full Evil Dead mode. Like, that would have been great. Or even the script for Scott Derrickson's version of Doctor Strange 2. Like, that would have been a full-on horror movie. That's the type of thing I want to see. Like I said, there are already exceptions to this with Werewolf by Night and She-Hulk. Like, I absolutely adore Werewolf by Night. I really think special presentations are the best way to do characters like him, and it's a shame they haven't done any more. And I'm honestly one of the very few people who really liked She-Hulk, for several reasons. But genuinely, I want more things like them. Ironically, using different genres for different characters is exactly the reason I'm optimistic about James Gunn's DCU. All the projects he's announced are different tones and genres, and yet they still exist within the same world. Like, we have a hopeful and lighthearted Superman movie coming. But we also have a horror movie with the Swamp Thing. Like, this is exactly the approach Marvel needs to take for different characters. Like, I want to see different creative visions for characters and movies and all that. Like, give me a full-blown horror supernatural movie with Ghost Rider, or a tragic monster movie with the Hulk, or even a full-blown comedy with Squirrel Girl or like the Great Lake Avengers or something. Alright, for my last big critique, it's a continuation of the last one to some extent, but it's ultimately a simple request. Please use the Marvel Universe for the love of Kirby! I'm not calling for comic accuracy here, because at the end of the day, the MCU is an adaptation. You know, you can take creative liberties and all that. But there are so many characters getting shafted that are already established that have so much potential for amazing movies, series, stories, stuff like that. Characters like the Hulk, Beta Ray Bill, Taskmaster. I'd even say to some extent Thor himself. Like earlier, I kind of briefly mentioned a tragic monster movie for the Hulk. But that's not a joke, I would love that sort of thing. Like an adaptation of the Immortal Hulk storyline. Instead of Bruce and the Hulk being one being, separate them and see what their dynamic is like with each other. Like, seriously, the Hulk is one of the most interesting comic characters in my opinion. And in the MCU, he just kind of feels like big tough guy, you know? Anyway, there are so many characters with potential and stories that should be shown to a larger audience. But when they finally get that chance to be in the MCU, they're always kind of relegated to being a side character and usually stripped of all the parts that make them interesting. But basically, you could probably just sum up this entire section with make more of these movies character studies, I guess. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the MCU and how I'd personally fix it. If you have any ideas or any suggestions on what you'd like to see changed about the MCU, let me know! This video was very different from the other ones I've done, and if this does decently well, it'll open up another format I could do for future videos, so here's to hoping you guys like this one. I've got a lot of other thoughts about the MCU too, but I'll save those for Euro Yaps. That's a shorter video type I want to start doing, where I'll just yap about whatever I'm feeling that day. But yeah, like I said earlier, now that we've hit 1K, I'm going to try and aim for a new video every Friday or Saturday. And as always, if you're looking to support the channel, you can become a true supporter through the membership. Members get exclusive content such as loyalty badges, super cool emotes, early access to new videos along with a shout out at the end of every video, and other various perks. Or if you're in the need of some gaming energy, go pick up some Poggers and use code EuroPoggers at checkout or use the link in the description. I'm also now working on getting a Fortnite creator code, so if you play Fortnite, that'll be another way to support the channel. I also personally recommend this one. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and don't forget, how do they keep delaying Blade? Like, come on!